Hey guys, thanks for joining another episode with Coach Adam here from TeamElitePhysique.com. Today we are going to go over the myths, busting some myths about can you build muscle while in a deficit? Is it impossible to build muscle while you're in a deficit? I've heard that you can only build muscle if you're in a caloric surplus. Let's see if that's true here, and I'm going to tell you right now in advance, spoiler alert, it is possible to build muscle while you're in a caloric deficit. So let's go ahead and jump into how that's possible, what's happening internally where this can happen, and how you can maximize this as well. So let's go ahead and jump into it. The way that's going to happen is going to be called nutrient partitioning. Okay, so this is going to be a new term to a lot of you out there who have never heard of this. Nutrient partitioning is essentially a theory of which direction your nutrients are going to go to when you consume them based on what you do and what is needed by the body at that time. So we're going to go into that. Now, some of the questions are going to be, okay, what is it exactly? Well, basically in the most simplest way of saying it, I lift weights hard. At that time, my body needs nutrients. It needs something to replenish the nutrients I use during that workout. The likelihood when I consume energy, glucose, protein, amino acids, fats, right? The likelihood that my body's going to use that to repair the muscle at that time is greater than the need for my body to store it as fat. Okay, the demand is there. Essentially, I created the mechanical need through mechanical force, right, tension, of your body actually needing nutrients to that worked muscle to repair it, to make it stronger, bigger, better for the next time that you lift it. So basically, nutrient partitioning is trying to use a theory of taking advantage of those windows, taking advantage of that stress that you're putting on the body to shift nutrients that you're consuming towards the muscle and away from fat, right? So how are we doing that? Is that even possible? It sounds too good to be true. Is it? Let's go ahead and go into the mechanisms of why it works. Okay, so yes, is it possible? Yes. Now, is it optimal for building muscle? That's going to be the thing. Okay, it is not optimal to build muscle in a low calorie deficit, in a deficit period. Yeah, it's not going to be the most optimal thing, but is it possible? Yes. How much muscle are you sacrificing? Well, that'll be on a later episode of how much muscle you're actually sacrificing. But when you look at the actual muscle of what you're going to be sacrificing while doing it, maintaining a low level of body fat or maintaining even losing body fat, you have to look at not just the muscle gained during that time period, but the muscle gained, the net muscle gained. And that's where people get messed up. They see the scale weight, they see the scale going up 1 pound a week, 1 pound a week. I'm gaining pure muscle, everyone thinks that. Come 20 pounds later, they found out that they build 12, 14 pounds of fat and they build, 6 pounds of muscle, but then now they have to diet off 14 pounds of fat and they end up losing 2 pounds of that muscle that they gained, netting only 4 pounds. So the real question becomes, is it better to just gain only 4 pounds of pure muscle, or is it better to gain 20 pounds total weight, 6 pounds of muscle, and then lose 2 of those pounds, netting only 4 pounds in the end? In the end, it's the same thing. So which one's more effective? I personally like this approach. And if you notice, that's how I do things. I try to keep people lean in the off season, staying around 10% above their stage weight. And these are the reasons why. People think, oh, you got to bulk, you got to bulk. If people are still thinking that, just remember, there has never been a single gram of muscle gained more because a gram of fat was gained. Those two do not correlate. Let's go ahead and go into it. What's happening with the body? So first off, let's go into insulin sensitivity, because that's important when we talk about nutrient partitioning. So insulin sensitivity. So this is what we have here. We have nutrients, glucose, glycogen, when you were basically replenishing the glucose that we use during a workout. So let's go ahead and look at this muscle here as an untrained muscle. You see there's very little glycogen stored in that muscle. Why? Well, there's very little need for it to be a lot of stored glycogen in that muscle. You're not using it to be explosive. You're not using it to use a lot of energy. You're not using it to do bicep curls very often. You rarely use it. You're on the couch, you're typing, you're on your phone, right? That's the untrained, typical sedentary person who has no need for a lot of glucose in the muscle cell, because why would you need it if you're not going to be using it? Now this person here, they're trained, okay? They're going through it, they're lifting a lot of weights. The body needs to use that energy immediately throughout exercises. You need to shovel nutrients back into that muscle because you're using it so often, it needs to recover. That's basically what we're doing here. Now, the best thing you can do for insulin sensitivity is exercise. It's going to be where you're depleting your glucose out of your muscle cell, and you can actually shuttle nutrients into the muscle cell without having huge spikes of insulin during that time. Your body is just needing it. It increases the muscle sensitivity of the cells. So something to really think about and know about when we talk about nutrient partitioning, right? As you see, when these nutrients leave here, We go into the post-workout nutrient timing, right? When we start off the exercise with all this glucose and glycogen in the muscle cell, post-workout we have a lot less. The glycogen is being taken out, it's being used, right, throughout the exercise. Being used throughout exercise to get you through your 10 reps, 15 reps, 16 sets, whatever. Your body's using that energy and it's depleted. So what's the body say? You basically took a sponge full of water, you squeezed it out, and then what we do after the workout, we throw it back into the water, right? Soak it back up, right? It is a sponge at that time after the workout to soak up nutrients, right? The insulin sensitivity is highest at that point because you just depleted the cells of the glycogen. So we shovel nutrients back in post-workout. Why is that relevant? Well, that's going to be a great time to eat calories and not really worry about you storing any body fat during that time. And everyone says, well, Adam, when I'm in a caloric surplus, it's the only time to gain muscle. Well, are you in a caloric surplus becomes the next question, right? And I think a lot of people don't understand how the body works, how nutrients work, and how we think of things as like on and off. We think of things as one day. We think of things as, I'm going to do a calorie carb cycle for one day. The body, you got to remember, the body doesn't turn off. It turns on once you're conceived. It turns off once you're dead. That's it. You got one on and one off in the body. We think of it as an on and off switch. We think, okay, we go to sleep and it's off. We wake up and it's on. That's not how it works. The only time you're off is when you're dead. You do not want to hit that off switch. So because you're always alive, and because you're always burning calories, the way that we think about calories and the way that the body actually burns calories is totally different, right? You're always burning calories. Yes, sometimes you're burning less, but you're always on. So remember that. So are you even in a caloric surplus is the question, right? So let's go ahead and go over a normal day for a normal bodybuilder who's in a caloric surplus. And let's say, you said you could only build muscle while you're in a caloric surplus. Okay, so are you in a caloric surplus? Let's go ahead and take a look at it. So here we have a 24-hour day, 12 to 12, 12 a.m. to 12 a.m. again. What happens when we wake up? So first off, let's go ahead and look at 9 o'clock. Our calories, that consumption at a 9 o'clock time, when we start, basically that's bedtime. We go all the way here. We are in a caloric deficit. This is the deficit, this is the surplus. We're in a deficit here. We haven't eaten since 9 o'clock. Let's go ahead and actually make this more realistic. 9 o'clock we ate our last meal at, let's say 7 o'clock actually. We ate at 7 o'clock and now we're used those calories and now we're in a deficit. That's more realistic. Okay, so we've been in a deficit since basically midnight here all the way till we wake up at 8 o'clock and eat our next meal. But that person's in a caloric surplus. That person's gaining muscle, right? Because why? Because we think if we eat more calories than we burn, we're always in a surplus, but that's not the case. This person could be eating 5,000 calories a day and have a resting metabolism of, let's say, 3,000, right? Or a total calorie burn throughout the day of 3,000. So 2,000 calorie surplus this person has, and they're like, oh, I'm in a surplus. At points of the day, yeah, you're in a surplus. But so let's go ahead and give that same scenario. Let's say this person eats a huge calorie meal at 8 o'clock, and then it dives down a little bit. Again, 1 o'clock he's in a deficit. He eats again, surplus. Again, goes back down, deficit, right? So you're in peaks and valleys of deficits and surpluses throughout the day, no matter what you do. The only way that you're going to be in a surplus 100% of the time is if you broke down how many calories you expect to burn that hour, you did the math precisely, and you ate more than that. That would be the only way of doing it. No one's going to do that. No one's going to be eating every hour before they're done digesting and staying up here the whole time, right? But so even in people's own logic of I can only gain muscle in a surplus, the way that they're eating food and the way that they're going about their day, even in their own logic, they're proving themselves wrong because they're in deficits throughout the day. If you're in a deficit, wouldn't you lose muscle, right? If you're trying to gain muscle in a surplus. So for the people saying you can only build muscle in a surplus, those people, those same people are actually in a deficit at multiple points throughout the day, especially during sleep. Right? Yes, their total calories are plus and minus and are a little bit in the plus factor, but they are in a minus, right? So just that alone makes you think, right? Well, okay, well, if they're in a deficit and they're still gaining muscle, maybe I can gain muscle in a deficit. What's happening during that time, right? So let's go ahead and break that down. What's actually happening here? So here's how the nutrient partitioning, the building muscle while in a deficit theory actually works. And me seeing it for so long, for so many years, I could say, I know it's more in the theory thing, nutrient partitioning, but I've seen it for years and years and years firsthand. And there's a lot of things that prove that it actually works. So let's go ahead and look at our energy options. That's going to be one of the first things we have to look at when we talk about nutrient partitioning, right? So energy options, we have our stored energy, we have stored glycogen, we have stored fat, we have even stored amino acids from proteins, right? So stored muscle, we can use that as energy too, though it's really unlikely we'll use it. The body can use it and waste away. You'd have to be in pretty extreme circumstances to do that. Really, really low calories, really, really high cardio, not doing anything at all mechanically, like in terms of working out to really maintain lean mass. It's pretty hard to lose actual skeletal muscle if you're working out hard and eating a decent amount of proteins. You're going to lose a little bit, but it's pretty hard to do as a useful source of energy. It takes a lot of energy for your body to actually use protein as a source of energy. So it's not a huge concern. The bigger concerns are going to be, okay, stored energy. Are we going to use glycogen? Are we going to use fat for our need of stored energy? And then we're going to have, unstored energy, things you just ate that's not stored yet, floating free in the bloodstream, right? Fat, glucose, protein, amino acids. Amino acids during that time are a little more easily available to be converted to glucose through a process called gluconeogenesis to actually be used as energy, but still not the most likely and really calorie expensive to convert those two. It's going to be a really low calorie amount that can be used and stored as energy during that time. Used for energy at that time. So you have all these different options, right, of stored energy. You have fat, glycogen, which are the most likely. You have fat, glucose as used of unstored energy. And now you're eating food. Okay, so with nutrient partitioning, how does it actually work? What's actually happening? So first off, let's go ahead and break down a day of someone who's working out really hard and what's happening. So you're going to eat, let's say, for example, burns. To make the math really simple, let's just go really simple. Let's say 2,000 calories, right? That's what they burn. So 2,000 calorie burn, very light person. You're most likely going to be burning more calories than 2,000 per day. 2,000 calories, but this person is only eating 1,500 calories a day. So 1,500 calorie consumption. Again, unlikely scenario, probably a pretty light person. If so, if you're doing bikini division, this would be a more likely scenario for someone who's, 5 to 115 pounds, something like that. Now, what's happening? So first thing that happens is you're going to work out, this person's working out their legs, their glutes 3 times a week, trying to really go after building the glutes and the hamstrings the way that they want them, the shoulders all the time, just like they do in bikini. So every time they work out, they're taking these nutrients and they are shoving them outside, right? They're using them as energy. They're depleting their muscle cells and they have a really high insulin sensitivity. So post-workout, that's going to be one of the best times to give your body nutrients so your body can absorb them just like we talked about over here, post-workout, and shove them right back in. But what about this though, right about this? How am I eating 1,500 calories? I'm burning 2,000. How am I able to build muscle then? I can only build muscle when I'm in a caloric surplus, right? Wrong, right? And now is the only way to be in a caloric surplus, the only way to get calories and energy by consumption? That's the other question, right? Well, we already talked about stored energy. How come I can't use any of that stored energy to meet the demands of my day and still build muscle? And that's where things change. That's where people don't get right. So people who think you can only build muscle while in a caloric surplus think that you need calories at every point of the day. They're not recognizing that they're in deficits throughout the day, and they think that your body can't use any energy at all to help with recover with muscle. So nutrient partitioning in theory is this. You're eating 1,500 calories. The demand of your body burning calories, let's just say the demand is, let's say it's 1,000 per day, and then an additional 500 from workouts, right? So you're only eating, and then your normal day, you're NEAT. So your non-exercise activity induced thermogenesis, basically you walking around, just moving, things like that. So 2,000 total calories are out, but you're only consuming 1,500. Well, these 1,500 calories are going to go towards recovery, building those muscles, but we're still another 500 calories we're missing to get that actual full recovery. What's happening? Well, remember we talked about the stored energy. So what happens? I'm eating less calories than I'm burning. The body is saying, I need to recover and build that muscle. Adam is beating me up, trying to build his glutes up, and I need him to be able to do that the next time. So I have two options as the body. I can either build muscle and be prepared for the stress that he's doing to me 3 times a week right now. And if I don't do that, the odds are he might rip a muscle, he might get weaker, and whatever it is that we're doing that requires this much energy and this much strength, we're not going to be able to do it we might get hurt if we don't build that much muscle. We might get hurt if we're not able to meet the demands of his day, because that's how the body thinks. The body thinks, oh, I'm lifting 100 pounds now. I used to only lift 90. I better be prepared for in case that rock is falling on me or whatever's happening out there. I need to be able to prepare to keep Adam safe, right? That's why we're building muscle. You're matching a demand that you're putting on your body. So the body says, no, I need to build that muscle, keep him safe because it looks like he needs it, right? So the body is taking calories from wherever it can get them, the 1,500 that you consume towards muscle, right? There's 500 calories it still needs. What's happening? Well, it takes fat energy and it uses that as its total daily use of calories, right? So you're consuming 1,500, it goes towards muscle, you still need another 500 to get through your day. 500 calories from fat leaves and is used as energy. So now you're building muscle while losing fat. You're creating a demand to shove nutrients to the muscle cell while simultaneously creating a demand to use more of your fat cells because of your total calories burned throughout the day. Now, this is the part where it's a little bit controversial because some people think this doesn't happen. But if you look at most top nutritionists, you look at most top bodybuilding coaches, you look at some serious examples you can see out there of people building muscle while in a deficit. You could look at some top bodybuilders who've done this. You could look at like Kevin Levrone, for example, used to grow into shows. You hear about people saying grow into shows. What's happening? Why are they able to lose fat while building muscle at the same time? Well, they're creating the demand, the body, giving the body no other choice than to do that. So all in all, that's what's happening. You are able to build muscle while losing fat, though there is a diminished return on that. Now, the farther the deficit, the less likely you're going to do that. It isn't easy for the body to do this. It takes a lot of energy demands for the body to actually do this. So no, it is not going to be the optimal way of building muscle. I'm never going to argue that it's the optimal way of building muscle. I think the more optimal way of building muscle is kind of closer to that maintenance, very slight surplus of calorie range where your body doesn't have to go through all this finagling to recover. It just has an adequate amount of calories to get throughout the day. And also there's going to be different factors too. Now, when you talk about nutrient partitioning and using available energy that's stored and also available energy that's consumed, we can also look at the situation, right? If you have someone who has 50 pounds of excess stored energy, so 50 pounds of fat, are they going to be able to do this at a faster rate than someone who only has 10 pounds of stored energy, who's pretty much contest lean? Absolutely. It's more easily available. It's more there. The body's going to hold on to those last 10 pounds of body fat that you have on you a lot more than if you're 100 pounds overweight. The body is trying to get rid of some of that weight if you're 100 pounds overweight. So it's going to be a lot easier, a lot more effective for that person. If you're at a very advanced lifter, that's going to be another scenario that changes things. So it's all going to be kind of on a sliding scale too of how effective this is going to be. If you're someone who has 40, 50 pounds to lose, and you're like, I don't want to go through a period of gaining, I want to go through a period of just cutting, but I'm not going to build any muscle. Well, good news for you is you can still build muscle while doing it. If you're someone who just stepped off stage, probably not super likely you're going to get the same benefits as that person who's 50 pounds overweight, just because meeting the demands of your energy is not going to be as easy for your body to take those last 10 pounds. At a certain point, the body wants to hold on to some of that fat because you're at a close point of not having any stored energy. And that will also be really bad for you, where you could even die if you used all your energy. Never seen it happen, but the body will start recognizing it as you get closer, and it'll get harder and harder at those lower rates. So it's going to be different for different people, but look at your situation, what makes the most sense. The one thing that comes to a conclusive end of this is you don't need to bulk when you're in the off season. You're always in calorie deficits and calorie surpluses. So people telling you, oh, you have to bulk in order to gain muscle, I think that is a wrong approach to doing it. Fat does not equal muscle ever, right? You being close to maintenance calories and in a slight surplus, I think, is the true way of going through a smart lean gain. When we look at how much energy is actually in a stored pound of muscle versus a stored pound of fat, it's totally different. Everyone thinks, oh, 3,500 calories in a stored pound of fat, it has to be 3,500 calories in a stored pound of muscle. That's not true. It's about 800 calories in a pound of muscle. So it's a totally different demand. So if we're talking about gaining 1 pound of muscle, let's say and the true math is 1 pound of muscle can be gained roughly in about 45 days. So in ideal scenarios, 45 days, and there's a lot of variance on that too. A new lifter versus an old lifter, enhanced lifter versus a natural lifter. Like, these are all variances, but let's say 1 pound a month to put it right in the middle for you all. we're talking about an 800 calorie surplus throughout the course of a month. How many calories is that per day? I mean, we're talking less than, what is that, less than 40 calories a day, something like that, but people are doing 1,000 calorie surpluses and wondering why they're getting fat. So you just have to do these things intelligently. You have to know the reasons of what's happening, why it's happening, if it's possible, and how you should best approach your way. My method is, if you're at about 10%, 12% above stage weight, I think you should be focusing on more maintaining your calories, closer to that, or doing a recomp. If you're over that, if you're, let's say you're 15% above stage weight or greater, I think it's a perfect position to start doing a recomp where you're trying to gain muscle while losing fat at the same time. If you're anything past that and you have, 30 pounds, 20 pounds plus to lose, I would say focus purely on gaining muscle while losing fat and going through a recomp using nutrient partitioning as your way of doing that. Don't have the deficits be too great, because it does get harder the greater the deficit. If you're very, very lean and you're trying to build muscle while doing nutrient partitioning and while being in a deficit, probably not the best scenario for you. I would probably bump that up to maintenance calories at minimum, maybe just a few percentage points above your maintenance, and that would probably be the ideal circumstance. But the main purpose of this today is to bust the myth. You do not need to go through a bulk to build muscle. Here's some of the reasons why. It is possible. It makes a lot of sense in theory when you think about it. If you're creating the demand for muscle to be fed, the body's going to find a way to feed it, basically. So hopefully you guys learned a thing or two from this one, and you're busting myths out there. The next time some bro says you need to be in a surplus in order to gain muscle, you can bust this out, show them. Hopefully it gets you in a few arguments. Keep those questions coming. I'll be answering them every week. Leave them in the comments section below. Thank you so much. TeamElitePhysique.com for worldwide online contest prep and transformations. Talk to you guys later.